they do not do very, very good on the exam, right? On the D-Day. So first of all, you need to understand that mocks are not there to look at as from a quantitative perspective of your scores and percentile, but they are a very, very qualitative examination in nature, right? So let's say whenever you give a mock, what do you do with it? First of all, you need to analyze that. Do you actually give the mock, look at the scores, look at the sectional scores, and then jump on to the next one? If you're doing that, this is a very, very wrong way to approach it, right? First of all, you need to understand that mock examinations are a simulation of your final examination, right? And you give mock examination to make all the mistakes that you don't want to make in the final examinations, right? It is not an exam where you need to score very, very high and feel good about. It is an examination where you need to make mistakes, find out where you're going wrong, so that you do not do them in the final exams, right? Jeet, do you align with
Yeah.
me on this ideology?
Yeah. So mainly the competitive exams that you would have given till now, it's all about attempting the maximum number of questions. But CAT and XAT, they are of attempting the right amount of questions. So you only have to attempt about 10 or 12 questions per section. So you have to find the right questions. It's not on how many maximum number of questions you want to attempt. It's so you have to assess what your strengths are, what your capabilities are, and then you go about in each section. So just don't go about like you have to make a target about of let's say there are 24 questions in the section, let's say VRC section or the quant section. So just make a target that you want to achieve like about the play only to your strengths. So don't go for attacking all the sections. Then coming to the second part where so now I think Aman you can continue right now. I'll just pitch in
Yes.
later.
Sure, sure. So now when Jeet rightly said, that you need to focus on your strengths and, your strengths should actually build up your score. So I always believe in this saying that, your strengths should be able to pull your scores to your desired level and your weaknesses should never be vulnerable enough to pull your scores down, right? So essentially what you need to do is whatever your strengths are regarding each of the three sections, VRC, DILR and Quant and VALR, DM and QA in XAT, you need to actually find out which are your good sections, which are your sections which you're most comfortable with, which are your sections in which you score the maximum in, right? Now, how do you do that? Whenever you get into a mock, you analyze it. There's a step-by-step process to it. Now, I'll get to the process later on about analyzing a mock. But before that, I want to get to that, in every mock, you will see that, in each of these sections, there would be some questions, when which you look at them, you feel very, very happy that let's say, some people feel very, very happy when they see questions on time, speed, distance. Some people feel very happy when they see questions of circular arrangements. Now, these questions which you feel very happy solving or very happy seeing are the questions which are actually your strengths, right? Now, also, there are some topics like number systems and geometry. So, whenever you see a geometric figure, a triangle drawn, you actually get scared and then you're like, oh my God, now how to solve that? Now, that is actually one of your weak areas, right? One of your areas in which you're very, very scared moving ahead. So first of all, it's very, very important to analyze which are your good areas, your strong areas, and which are your weak areas, right? Now, how do you go about with it? You solve a lot of questions, find out which questions you love solving, which questions you have good accuracy in, and which questions you struggle solving, which questions you have bad accuracy in, or you are taking a lot of time solving, right? This is how you find out your strengths and weaknesses. Now, how to put them about in your mocks, right? Now, first of all, I need to tell you there is a specific framework which you need to use to analyze your mock. First of all, make an habit of putting at least 1.5x of your time you put into solving the mock into analyzing the mock, right? So let's say you put 2 hours of yourself in solving the mock. You need to at least put 2 to 3 hours in analyzing the mock because that's how you're going to improve in the next mock. If you're not putting that much amount of time, you're essentially not improving, but just giving n number of mocks. And after CAT, you'll be like, oh my God, I solved 26 mocks maybe, but then my scores weren't that good, right? Because you didn't analyze even three of them properly. So that is a very, very important thing. Do you align with me, Jeet, on this thing? It's very, very
Yeah,
crucial.
I totally agree with it. This is what I've done for different competitive exams as well. That the 1.5x rule is totally correct. Then coming to that, whenever you analyze the mock, so it's not only checking what all went wrong, but also what all went right for you. So let's say the amount of questions that you got correct. So there might be some catch that you got that you were able to solve during the paper. So there's a chance that you might not able to be catch that when you give the paper again. So just whenever you give the mocks, so analyze all the questions. So first go about the questions that you were get wrong or you couldn't attempt. So check the section in which they are. If there's a particular topic in which you are weak, or if the logic that you were able to build but you wouldn't able to reach the end, you couldn't find the solution. So look for the first, whenever you analyze the mock. So let's say let's start with VRC. So whenever you start with VRC, so there are some sections. So there are some type of RCs that you might not be comfortable with, or there might be some type of the ordering questions, the jumbling of questions. So you might not be able to comfortable with. So what you can do is like you can prepare a list or about of after analyzing 3 to 4 mocks, like what all the where are you lacking, what all type of questions are you consistently not able to answer. So this is one thing you could do for all the sections. It might be for quant, it's very easy for quant to do that. So because quant has particular topics, then coming to like whenever you analyze, so and the wrong question. So there are two types of errors that you could be having. One could be that you couldn't arrive at the right logic, or the second part is that you couldn't arrive at the end solution. So what you could do is prepare the list as I told, and then try to go for solving particular questions of that topic itself. So right now we only have 1 month left. So there's very much less time for sectional tests. So what you could do is just prepare or about 2 to 3 weaknesses that you have in each section and go on. Like you should know that these are your weaknesses, but and then start working on them. So as Aman rightly said, if you are giving a 2 hour paper, you need to spend at least 3 to 3.5 hours for analyzing the paper. Because if you don't go for analyzing the paper, then there's no point giving the next mock, because you have to apply what you want, what went wrong, what you learned from this paper in the next paper itself. So keep analyzing the mocks. It's not about the number of mocks, but the quality of mocks that you give. So like the I quanta mocks that we had given, they were very good. We were able to it helped a lot during the process. And as you go on till the end, like till the 27th, 28th November, it's going to be a very good tool for you to excel, to reach the college that you want to.
Yeah, and
Aman?
one good thing about them. So first of all, before getting to the ICAT mocks that iQuanta offers, I want to put up how I analyzed every mock, right? And you guys need to understand this very, very thoroughly. So I want all of yours attention very, very properly on this thing, because this is one of the most important thing, which is going to be a make or break for you giving mocks and improving from them, right? So I typically followed a three-step framework to analyze my mock, right? So first of all, it's very, very important to have a notebook or a spreadsheet for you, at least a basic spreadsheet which has specific details about your strengths, weaknesses, like that, right? Or a notebook where you can solve questions or input questions which you couldn't do or which you went wrong with. So first of all, what I did was I followed a three-step framework. First are the questions which you could not attempt, right? So there will be three kinds of questions. First, which you could not attempt. Second, which you attempted but went wrong. Second, which you attempted correctly, right? Now we need to analyze all three of them very, very properly. So first, you need to understand which questions you went wrong with, right? Now, there can be two, three reasons why first questions were which you could not attempt. Now, there could be two, three reasons why you could not attempt those questions. First of all, is you didn't solve it under the time pressure, right? You thought that you will be able to do it under 5 or 6 minute time, but then in 2 minutes time, you're not able to solve the questions. Now, these are question number one. Second is you didn't know the concept. You didn't have the conceptual clarity to solve the required question, right? Now, these are the two kind of things which can come up when you're not able to solve a question, right? Now, if you are not able to solve it under the time pressure, then what you should do it after the exam, you should try solving it without the time pressure, right? To understand if the conceptual clarity is there or not, right? Secondly, if the conceptual clarity is itself lacking, try looking at the solution and understand what you didn't know in this particular thing, right? Or this particular topic. So you surely might be knowing some basics of the topic. So try to bridge that gap. That's what you knew and what are the exact solutions, and try to bridge that gap and put everything of this in that notebook that you've prepared. Second are the questions which you attempted incorrectly, right? Now, these are actually a very big pain to your scores, because a lot of them you actually know how to solve, but then you go wrong with this, and where you could have scored a +3, you actually score a -4, right? Which is essentially a very, very big difference. So now there can again be two reasons here. First of all, you made a silly mistake. You made a mathematical error, or you made a language error, right? Sometimes we forget looking at that not right there in the end, right? Sometimes the answer is asked in centimeters, we put it up in millimeters, right? So did you actually make an error like this? So you need to actually note this down in your notebook as well, that in this exam, I made three particular numerical errors. I made four linguistic errors, right? Because what happens is that this puts up a reinforcement thing in your brain, right? When you look at that again and again, you're way more cautious in the next exam that I don't have to make this problem an error again, right? And this actually puts up in your brain and you do not forget it in the next mock. Second is that you went wrong somewhere in the method or the concept, right? So try focusing on the concept part of it from the solution and try improving that aspect of it, right? Third type of questions, which are very, very counterintuitive as to why do we need to actually assess the correct questions that we did, because of the time aspect, right? Sometimes you put up 6 minutes into a question and you solve that correctly, but then that doesn't make sense, right? Because you're actually sabotaging four more questions that you could have solved. So essentially try to analyze the time taken to solve each question. Is it actually very, very high? And if it is actually very, very high, try looking at the solution. If there is a more optimum solution out there, note that down in the notebook and learn that, right? Now, how iQuanta and iCat actually helps here is, it actually solves half of the part of the funnel. It gives you the time that you took for each question, and it actually highlights that these are the questions you took a lot of time in. These are the questions you made mistakes in, and these are your strong areas. These are your weak areas. So it actually highlights a lot of these aspects to you upfront, right? Now, for a mock for us, it was a big pain because it took us around 2.5, 3 hours to analyze a mock. But then with iCat, I think that can be fast tracked to 1.5 hour, right? Because half of the things are already provided to you. We actually maintained a proper spreadsheet. We used to input every single thing out there. But iCat actually gives that to you in the form of a dashboard, right? Secondly, it gives your predicted percentile, it gives you predicted college. So it actually gives you the required motivation to be able to go about with that as well. What do you think, Jeet, about this?
I totally agree with you. So, like you rightly pointed out the spreadsheet, I use that too. So I wrote all my sections, all the questions that I did in a notebook. I prepared them. So I'm just reiterating one point that you focus only on the easy and the medium level questions. So whenever you attempt the mocks, so you will whenever you analyze, you will get to know which was the difficult questions, which was the easy, medium questions, and you will also able to know that how many people attempted it correctly, how many people attempted the right question, how many people actually were able to even attempt the question. So based on that, you can also assess like where are you wasting your time on many difficult questions, or are you like making mistakes in the easy questions. So this is one thing that you could be able to do that whenever you analyze the mock. This is only possible after the whenever you analyze, because you could at the end, after about 6 to 7 mocks or about 15 days before the paper, you will still be making the same mistake again and again. So just try to focus on the easy and the medium questions, or basically your strengths. You might be you would have one strength which could be a difficult question, but you were able to solve it. So just this is all about a game of strengths. It's not about attempting the maximum questions. Now coming to the second part, like whenever you're analyzing the mock, after let's say you've removed the time pressure. So now when you're able to solve it, now you should analyze now like what went wrong, like what was the part of the question that you could not attempt, why, like let's say in the DILR section there were 4 questions or 6 questions in each passage. So what was the thing that you were not able to, you might have been have able to attempt 1 or 2 questions out of the 6. So what was stopping you from attempting them, and what went right now? So one thing is generally the time pressure, but generally there are other things too. The stress at that point of time, the topic you might not be able to, you might not have been comfortable with. So whenever you analyze the test, analyze the mock. So what you could do is now after you've analyzed like what was the issue, what went wrong, you could now have a timer. So let's say there are 4 or 6 questions in the passage. So you could give a time of about 12 minutes or 15 minutes for each passage, and then solve the passage again. So now you will like you now not only know what went wrong, but you know also how to do it. So this could be very helpful for the similar type of questions that come during the next mocks. So there are high chances that the pattern of questions gets repeated, let's say in the previous year question papers or in the mocks that iQuanta has. So there are high chances that you will get similar passages in let's say in VRC or similar in questions in the DILR section. So just focus like this is the most important part. This is even important than giving the mock. So focus a lot on giving the so analyzing the mock test. Over to you, Aman.
Yeah, I mean, and let's move forward to something which you guys would actually like, right? Now, every one of you is actually struggling with one section or the other. Some of us have problems with VRC, some of us have problems with DRR, some with QA, right? A lot of non-engineers with QA, typically a lot of engineers with VRC. So let's tackle them one by one and let you understand what to actually do to be able to, get out of that loop of low scores, right? First of all, I need you to understand even if you're getting low scores right now, that's not an indicator of anything. I know one person, he scored like 80, 85 percentile, 75 percentile consistently in mocks. And after November, he started improving a lot. In November, he started improving a lot. And eventually, he scored a 99.2 in CAT, right? So essentially, you need to not get bogged down with these scores because these are anyways dummy numbers if you don't work upon them, right? Now, coming up to each section, first of all, let's target VRC. No, this section is entirely about, how you comprehend those words written in English, right? Sometimes in form of paragraphs, sometimes passages, sometimes just sentences, right? Now, that is something which is very, very puzzling to us because, sometimes English is something which we have been studying all our life, right? And something which we actually struggle understanding is why are we not able to understand that simple thing written in English? Or why is it so difficult to just answer a passage? Right. So there are some mistakes typically that every aspirant makes who has low scores in VRC, and let's tackle it one by one. One thing that we all do wrong is attempting a lot of questions way more than what we can handle, right? Sometimes what happens is we could essentially do 15, 16 questions nicely, but then we think it's just normal English and how can I go wrong about that? I feel my gut says this is right. And then I attempt, let's say, 20 of them, right? Now, what happens is when you actually go about this way, you actually attempt those four questions wrong and you actually struggle with your accuracy right there, right? I'll get back to you, Aditi. So what happens is you're actually attempting way more than what you could have done normally, and then so understand this that your other 15 questions, which you could have attempted properly, you're actually creating a time pressure for yourself by attempting 20 questions, and then the accuracy goes down the drain for you. So if this is the mistake that you're making, if you feel you're attempting way more than what you should do, you should actually try reducing your attempts by 10-15% in the next 2-3 mocks, right? Let's say if you're attempting 20 questions right now, try attempting 16, 17 in the next mock. See if your accuracy improves. See if you're able to manage the time pressure in the next mock, right? Mistake number two is, which is a very, very crucial one, right? And I think all of us are stuck in that. We're actually stuck between two options. Now, this is something which is a problem for every CAT aspirant, every person who's attempting VRC passages. Even I think the people who make those VRC passages, they're also sometimes stuck in that loop. That these two options are very, very close, right? Now, how to go about picking one options which you feel is correct, right? Now, I have actually made a triple test for myself. I had made it last year to be actually coming up to the right option, right? Now, there are three conditions for the option to be right. And Jeet can tell me if he disagrees or any one of you, right? First of all, is which option resonates with the storyline better, right? Now, every RC typically has a storyline, an introductory from a conclusive statement, the entire flow of the storyline, which option resonates with the storyline the most. Second is that which option sounds good to you versus which option sounds good to the author, right? Now, sometimes what happens is we feel that this option is correct, but the author would not. The way the author has put up that passage, he would not feel that that is the perfect option, right? So you do not have to think from your perspective, you have to think from the perspective of the author who has written that passage. That is very, very important. Third thing is the option actually answering the question that is being asked? Sometimes the two statements, one statement is actually correct. It's perfectly fine. It sounds very, very good to you. But is it actually answering the question that is being asked, right? That you need to very well answer, right? That if the question is, what can you infer from this? Now, what can you infer from that particular statement, not from the passage? Sometimes two option would be inferred from the passage, but from that particular statement, which option is being inferred, right? You need to answer that thing. So if you look at these triple tests, you can actually go forward with typically selecting the right option, right? Now, third is following the same pattern for this section every time, right? Now, what most of us do is we go forward, solve the RCs first, then move to the VA first. Now, that is not a very, very good thing to do, right? Because sometimes what happens is the RCs and initial first, second RCs is very, very difficult. And VA is generally a piece of cake sometimes, right? Now, what you need to do is in the initial 1 to 2 minutes, you need to skim through the RCs and through the VA to understand which section out of VA and RC is the easier one. And what RCs are you more comfortable with, right? Now, let's say RC number 3 and 4 is linguistically more easy to comprehend. So focus on RC number 3 and 4 from the start rather than 1 and 2, right? Now, essentially, you need to get out of that loop. You need to think about doing this. Sometimes you feel that why waste 2 minutes, right? But these 2 minutes will help you save those 5, 6 minutes of time and will help you improve that accuracy. Because initially, if you attempt easier questions, that's actually good to improve your accuracy, right? That's actually good to push up your scores a bit. That's actually good for your confidence, right? So essentially, one size fits all doesn't work here. You need to see which of VA or RC is good, which of VA or RC is easier or difficult, and that's actually going to help you in the end, right? Now, coming up to the question that Aditi asked, I guess. So Aditi asked how to tackle the fluctuations in VRC score and how to improve accuracy. So Aditi, you need to understand why that fluctuation happens first of all, right? Now, what would have happened is you attempt a lot of questions. Sometimes those questions work good for you. Sometimes those questions don't work good for you. So let's say you attempt 15 plus 5 questions every time. If your questions in that 5 questions, accuracy in that 5 questions is good, you score good. If your accuracy in that 5 questions is bad, you score bad. You would see that your accuracy in that 15% is 15 question is consistently good, but those 5 questions actually improve your score or diminish it. So you need to actually look at from that perspective that do you actually need to attempt those 5 questions, or do you need to achieve that stable score by attempting those 15, 16, 18 questions, right? So do not attempt questions which you feel are not good for you. Do not. So if you have read the RC, it's not very, very important to solve all 5 of the questions that are there after the RC. So do not go back into that trap that, if I've read the RC, I have to actually do it. Do not attach ego to it, right? And essentially, even in the mocks, every option has a particular value, right? So try understanding the story behind every option, the option that you picked, the option that's actually the answer, and understand the difference of what you think and what the answer actually is. The more you solve mocks and analyze this, you'll understand that there is a pattern behind the answers. So try finding the pattern behind the answers, and your accuracy and your scores will surely improve. Lee, do you have something to add about the VRC
Um,
aspect?
yeah, so I'll just, well, I think Aman, you've covered everything. I'll just about the skimming through part. So what you could do is in the first 2 minutes of the when you start the VRC section, just go through the four passages and reach each passage like a first and the last line of the each passage. Because there are some type of RCs that are asked. So there might be historical, it might be basically factual or mythological, or it might be based on economics or business. So I think till now you might have known like what topics are comfortable with in general in life, like what all topics you're comfortable with reading, and there might be some jargons. So if you're comfortable with with those jargons, then you might be have an inclination to attempt those first. So, but do not get into that trap. You might be comfortable with economics or business, and you get a passage for that, but the questions might be pretty tough. So whenever you get the paper, when you start the paper, so first 2 minutes, skim through all the passages and then prepare a list, and don't just mention like which all you would be doing. Prepare an order. So which passage you will be attempting first, which you will be attempting second, and then go for. So what I did was that I prepared out of the four RCs. I prepared a list of two RCs which I'll be doing first, and then I'll be looking at the other RCs. I'll not be looking at the other two RCs at any point till I complete the two RCs. So, and the second thing is, so generally people have their strategy of attempting VA first or RC first. So it's totally up to you. It's totally up to you what works for you. So whenever you start, so just prepare like, or if you have time till now, so you can just start with, what I did was I started with two RCs, and then I did one RC. I went to the VA section. I solved some 3 or 4 questions. I then went back to RCs again. So this is what worked for me because I tried this for many mocks. So this is, I think VARC is a section where you need to prepare your strategy and prepare a run through of what you will be doing in the final paper. So this is totally up to you. You might be starting with VA section first and then going to RCs, because generally RCs it's a lot to process at one point of time and attempting the questions based on that. So whatever you feel comfortable, if you're comfortable with solving three RCs at a stretch and then going to VA, it's totally up to you. But just don't change the strategy. Make one rough plan and stick to it for the next at least 2 to 3 mocks. See what's going wrong, see what's going right. If your accuracy is not getting affected, if your accuracy is very poor in VA section due to this, then change the format a bit, and then go on working about it. Yeah, man. We want to start with DIR section now? Or,
Sure. I'll go ahead with DILR. So basically, a lot of us, I think engineers, non-engineers, all of us struggle with DILR, right? Now, what is DILR essentially? It's actually a mixture of VRC and QA, right? It has some numbers, it has some sentences, and then we have to combine them and come up with a solution, right? So this section actually just tells your familiarity with the puzzles that are presented, right? And your ability to think comprehensively. Okay, now if you are struggling with DILR, then again, I have some three-step framework. We actually going good with it. First of all, I call it variation game, right? So DILR is actually a variation game. You do not know what variation is going to come in the final exam, right? So the more number of questions you solve, the less variation happens for you, right? So for that, make an habit of solving at least five questions every single day, right? Now, at least five sets every single day. And those should be mixed sets. Now, you should not be solving, let's say, five questions of circular arrangement every single day. You should be having mixed sets to solve, right? Now, what you have to do is from that is it gives you a flavor of different kind of sets. So it develops that familiarity aspects, right? You can actually see a familiar set in the final DILR exam. Secondly, what it gives you the logical and mathematical acumen that you require to be able to do good in that exam, right? Now, how iQuanta actually helped in that was, they actually, in their CAT course and the IMABC course, they give you a lot of sets actually. They give you close to around 500 to 1,000 sets so that every single day you have new sets to solve, right? And you do not have to get stuck with similar sets and coming up with solving them because that's actually not going to develop your acumen, but then you're just reinforcing yourself that, you know DILR, but you actually don't. So they give you a lot of sets to solve and a lot of different ones along with the solution. So you should try solving them and five new sets every single day will do a great job for you. Secondly, I call a saying that, Usain Bolt is a very bad marathon runner, but, Mo Farah is a very, very bad sprinter as well, right? So you need to understand what's your strengths, right? You need to understand, first of all, that let's say there are four sets. Okay. Again, the prioritization comes up here very, very nicely. You need to understand which set you are very comfortable with. Which of these sets did you solve properly in the mocks before exam, right? So let's say you are very, very good with tournaments, games and tournaments, or you're very good with Sudoku puzzles. As soon as you see a Sudoku puzzle right there, even if it's a third or fourth set, you need to star mark it. That I have to start with the Sudoku puzzle, or the second question should at least be the Sudoku puzzle, right? So you need to at least go about like that. You need to spend those 2, 3 minutes finding the sets that you love solving, solve those sets, gain that confidence, and gain that minimum score of around 10 to 15 to push up your confidence, right? You're not getting bad. Okay, Tanishka, I'll come to you. Particularly in VRC section, out of 72 score, like a 30 to 35 plus will be a very, very good score, right? If the paper is tough, a 35 plus should be good. If the paper is easy, let's say 40 plus will fetch you a 99 percentile. I hope I answered your question. Now, second is prioritize and choose, right? So prioritize and then you have to choose those sets as well. Now, let's say you put up a framework, let's say 2, 3, 4, 1 is my prioritization. Now, after two, you have to essentially go with the third one, right? You do not have to change it in the middle that, now let's solve fourth one because it seems good. Because essentially you spend the initial 3 minutes to find out which are good enough. So don't change the strategy. Go for the 2, 3, 4, 1. If you have booked that 2, 3, 4, 1, now again, if two doesn't go for you, doesn't matter. If you go to four, it can also not go good for you. So if you have decided to go for 2, 3, 4, 1, go for 2, 3, 4, 1. I think I made sense. Now, again, how to pick the sets? I have a triple order test for this as well. So first is LOD rules this game. First of all, you need to understand that you read through this sets, find the language, see if there's data or not available. So if typically a set has lot of data and the language is clear, that set is easy. That's as simple as that. If you have a lot of data, you'll make sense out of the data, you'll do something out of it, and you'll solve that set, that's for sure. So if a set has good amount of data and the language is clear, it's an easy. Secondly, familiarity. Which topics? So we talked about the games and tournaments in the Sudoku thing. This is the same one. Third is the DI and LR. Now DILR has, let's typically take it as two questions, DI, two questions, LR. So typically look at which you are more comfortable with. Are you comfortable with pie chart? Are you comfortable with scatter chart? Are you comfortable with, arrangement kind of questions? And then you go forward with DI or LR, which is your strength. So if your strength is DI, solve those two DI sets first and then jump to LR because you want to gain that number, gain that score, and then, go forward with the confidence. Third is mastering the time. DILR is a section in which I also struggled a lot. And I think Geet would agree to that,
yeah.
in the CAT 2022 paper, we struggled big time, facing that time and, going forward with that. And for that matter, you need to solve those sets in a timed manner, first of all. Every set that you practice, apart from mock as well. So let's say iQuanta gives you so many sets. So take those sets, solve them in a timed manner. That is very, very important. Do not go forward solving them in, let's say, a 40-minute time span, because that's not going to help you in the exam. Now, the time for doing that was August, September, maybe, but now is not the time to do that. Now is the time to gain that time pressure, perform under that time pressure, and gain that scores out there, right? So this is about DLRs from me. G, do you have anything else to add to this?
No, I think you've covered everything. So about the prioritization, and one thing I would like to tell is that even if you get 10 questions correctly in the DILR section, there's a high chance you can get a 98, 99 percentile in this section. So what this is one thing that I did was whenever prioritizing was to be done in the first 2, 3 minutes, what I did was I used to pick a 4 question passage and a 6 question passage because I thought that this would be enough for me to sail through a 98, 99 percentile. But there's a high chance that I might make mistakes. There might be some flaws, and I couldn't get all the 10 questions correct. So, as following the framework that Aman said, that you prioritize using these. So, you whatever you might be comfortable with, because generally DI questions it might be data heavy, but it generally is on the easier side because LR generally takes time and you have to. There's like the circular arrangement is there. It has about 7, 8 statements. There might be arrangement questions, so it has about 14, 15 statements. So it generally takes time. So this LR was one of my weaknesses. So what I did was generally whenever prioritizing was done, I used to pick a 4 and a 6 question passage. And whenever after that you used to get the time. So generally what happened was it's not necessary that you need to understand the whole passage to attempt all the questions. There's a high chance that the one of the questions or two of the questions of the remaining passages, it might be like you might need very little information to solve that. You might not require to understand the whole passage. So what you could do is after you've attempted about 2 passages, so you could skim through the third passage and go through the questions. There's a high chance that you could solve at least 1 or 2 of them. So this is what you could do is like whenever after you've done about 10 or 11 questions. So one thing is you should never let ego get the best of you or stress get the best of you during this time because there's a high chance when you were solving a passage you might not be able to solve it and the pressure starts building up because DILR is one section which has a high chance of that. So never if you are facing that, take a 30-second break, take a 40-second break and drink water, have a break, and then start again with the passage, read the passage again, or move to the next passage. It's totally up to you, but don't get that if you already spent 4 or 5 minutes on the passage, you need to spend another 10 minutes on the passage. If you're not able to crack the passage, then you need to move to the next passage. So, yeah, I think I've covered everything. Naman. You can
Yeah,
start with
and
confidence.
before moving to QA, which is actually my section, I actually want to talk about, this is not just specific to CAT, right? Now VLR is actually also there in ZAT. QA is also there in ZAT, and sometimes DM. So from the past 4 or 5 years, they've not been doing so, but sometimes in DM also they ask database questions, logical reasoning questions, right? So you need to be very, very thorough with them for the CAT aspect and for the ZAT aspect of things as well. Now for CAT, uh, there are materials available, but sometimes for ZAT, there are not a lot of good materials available, specifically, because uh, ZAT is an exam which is very, very tricky to crack in general, I feel, and ZAT is way more strategy based because then you don't have that time per section. So, you have to pick and choose which section you want to solve. And then there's a sectional score thing, which actually messes up with a lot of people. I think right guidance for ZAT is also very, very important. So we being from XLRI, we understand that, ZAT is an exam which is fundamentally very similar to CAT, but strategically very, very different from ZAT, right? So for that, I think you need some proper mentorship for ZAT, right? And I think last year I did take similar course from iQuanta for ZAT. They launch it very, very soon this year as well. So go through that as well. And I think if it helps you, I think you should go forward buying that, because getting that level of mentors, getting that level of strategic advice is very, very important for an exam like ZAT, right? Moving forward to QA, right? Now, QA, I love this section absolutely, right? Honestly, this section is nothing but just a random combination of numbers, shapes, and combining them together, right? If you can make some sense out of those numbers, if you can make some sense out of those shapes, you are actually going to be doing very, very good in QA. And then some of the non-engineers would be smiling behind the cameras and saying, "Oh, is it that easy?" It's been around 3, 4, 5, 6 months. We've been struggling with QA, and you put it up so easily. So first of all, I'll put up first very, very important rule is strategizing is a key here, right? This section is essentially very, very fundamental in the sense that, we have been doing these questions from our ninth, 10th standard. Now, again, it's been a lot of time, so a lot of us are out of touch. So we feel, that it's very, very tough for us now. But understand when we were 14-year-olds, we used to do these questions very, very properly and very, very easily, right? So what is different? Strategizing is different, right? Now, first of all, let's come up to the solving part of it. Then we'll come up to the mock aspect of it about how to do the testing, right? Now, essentially, in these section, VRC, DILR, and QA. QA is the section which has the most amount of structured syllabus, right? It gives you the proper bifurcation under every chapter. It divides every chapter into specific segments like geometry, algebra, arithmetic, right? So you have a very, very structured syllabus, which gives you a very, very easier understanding of your strengths and weaknesses as well, right? So essentially try and understand where you're good at, where you're bad at, try improving what you're good at, try bringing that weakness to a base level so that if the questions of level of difficulty L1 or L2 comes in the examination, you should be able to solve that, right? Let's say if they ask you find the number of factors of a number, you should be able to do that. Even if you don't know the concepts of number system, you should be able to solve that question, right? So how you go about with that is essentially make an habit of solving 35 to 40 questions of QA every single day, right? You need to understand there's just 1 month out there for CAT, right? And if you're not solving 35, 40 questions every day for QA, you are essentially going to be lacking in some aspects of it and your scores will struggle to improve, right? And if possible, try doing that in a timed manner. So for your strengths, do that in a timed manner. For concepts, for topics which you're not very, very good at, solve them under a 5, 6, 10 minute time frame and understand it conceptually so that you can do it eventually in the exam, right? Now, coming back to the test taking part of it, how to go forward with taking the test. So I'll give my personal example. My CAT 2022 VARC and DILR, I felt particularly were disasters, right? And then I thought, okay, this year is gone for me, and then I'm not going to do anything, and I have to give it next year itself. But then my scores were decent in the two sections. I realized it later, but then QA came to me, right? And then essentially what I did was I didn't panic. I thought, okay, I have a strategy in my mind. I have practiced it for good 15 marks, and then I'll employ the strategy here, and then I'll get out of it. And I solved the entire paper in like 31 minutes, and that was all thanks to the strategy, right? If I would have gone there doing all the questions, then it would be a haywire. My scores would not have improved. So I'll actually put up the strategy to you, which I did, and Jeet can tell if he has a differentiated strategy from that. So what I do usually is I divide the paper into L1, L2, and L3 level of difficulties. Now, I don't skim it like VARC and TILR because there are so many questions to skim. But as I go, I categorically divide them in the initial 10 seconds. If this is L1, if this is L2, if this is L3. Now, so what my plan is, I divide the entire paper into a 40-40-20 framework. Initial 40% of time should go into solving the easy L1 questions. Next 40% of time should go into the L2 question, and last 20% of time should go into the L3 question, not more than 7-8 minutes, right? Now, in that 40%, 50% time, which is like around 12 to 15 minutes or 20 minutes, maybe, you have to essentially go forward with solving 50% of questions that you felt should be doing, right? Now, they can be as simple as finding the factors of a number, right? Or they can be using normal Apollonius theorem, or they can be, normal time, speed, distance questions, basic format questions, right? So try solving those types of questions first. It gives you that, minimum number of 15 to 20 marks. It gives you that level of confidence that, now I've scored minimum 15, 20 marks. My 80-85 percentile is sure from it. And now again, I'll move forward, right? Now, essentially, when we're talking about this, you need to be very, very sticky with the time aspect of it, right? If there is an L1 question, you don't spend more than 1.5 to 2 minutes solving that. If there is an L2 question, you don't spend more than 3 to 4 minutes solving that, and 5 minutes for the L3 aspect of it. Now, you would be like, you are good at QA, so you're saying this. No, I mean, even for you, if you're spending like 4 minutes for a L1 question, understand that the maximum amount of L1 questions that you can solve is 10 itself. Right now, what can it get you? It can get you nothing because some of these will be wrong as well, right? So essentially have that time and clock running in that mind every time while solving questions. And if you feel time is exceeding, if you feel you're not getting a way out, leave that question because you're essentially having a lot of questions to solve. So you're not going to be having scarcity of questions. Trust me, even I didn't have scarcity of questions. Even till the end, I was like, okay, I have more questions to solve, more questions to solve, right? So do not attach that ego, first of all. Secondly, uh, there is a pace at which the exam running. Now, this is similar to what I said just ago, but there's a pace at which the exam is running. There's a pace at which you are solving the questions. Try aligning both of them, right? It should not be that you're solving the questions too fast as well, because then you might be making some mistakes. Understand this thing that if you're actually going and rushing along the questions, you might be making some mistakes. If you're going slow with that, you're actually doing it very, very slow, and then your marks are not going to improve. So this is one thing that is there. Secondly, I did tell you about the 35, 40 question, 35, 40 questions that you have to solve every single day. Third thing is, I always believe on the saying that don't jump on the dead cat, quite literally. Do not actually focus on questions or topics which are your weaknesses. Now is not the time to watch videos, spending 8 hours every single day watching number system or geometry videos and then practicing those questions properly. Now you don't have time for that, right? What essentially you should do is look at PYQs, look at iQuanta mocks, look at the L1, L2 questions from those topics, try learning them, and that's it. Do not go forward for solving a L3 difficulty questions of geometry if you're not very, very comfortable, and just leave it out there. If you cannot do it right now, you will not be able to do it in the exam as well if you're not practiced enough, right? So leave that part of the syllabus in the QA paper and you're good to go. Do not spend a lot of time. Remember, you just have 30 days to do that. Jeet, do you have something to add?
Yeah. So just about talking about the categorization of questions, like Aman did it with based on the difficulty level. What I did was I did on the time taken. So whenever I used to start with the questions, what I did was I used to categorize them as this is a doable question. The second would be doable. I know the logic, I know the process, but it would take time. And the third would be I'm familiar with the topic, but I need to spend some time on this on the question. And the fourth one would be I'm not going to touch this question. So whenever this I used the process I used to it's not skimming like we used to do in DILR and VRC. This is a section you have to go as it comes. So as you start attempting the questions, you make the list and you start attempting it. But and so that's why I went about 2 to 3 iterations throughout the paper and going through the questions. I used to mark as for review and then come back to them again. And same as Aman said, having a time clock on each question is very important. Because if you're for the L1 questions, if you're spending about 1.5 2 minutes, that's perfectly fine. But moving to the difficult questions, it becomes very difficult as you move on because at the let's say in this last 5 to 7 minutes, if you have about 8 or 9 questions which have been attempted, so that builds a lot of stress, and you might not even able to be solving the questions you know you were going to solve. So this is what I think you could work on, and so just make it a habit. Go to about 2 to 3 iterations throughout the process, and you should by now know like what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, and as and when you go through the process, just go through like which all topics you're comfortable with, make a list of them and start attempting them as you go through them. So don't keep on switching between them. And second thing is, this is just a general thing that during the process I realized that quant would be my strength, and this was the quant was a section which used to lift up my the remaining two sections. So cat and zat, these are tests of your mental strength and endurance. So you should not let the strength, the results of one section affect the other, because what happened in cat 22 was similar to what happened with Aman, because I was not able to attempt 10 or 11 questions in DILR section itself. So I knew that quant was my strength. So if I had affect my mental capabilities, that I could not have been able to attempt get a 99 percentile in cat and zat. So never let the stress get the best of you and the ego get the best of you. If you're not able to solve the question in the set time format that you have, you need to move on to the next question. So this is about cat, as I'm repeating again, cat is about attempting the right questions and not the maximum number of amount of questions. So yeah, I think Aman, we can open the floor up to questions, right?
Yeah, just a minute to speak about that as well. I mean, and what are so a few students have also asked previously that, what are the differences, typical differences between ZAT and CAT. So coming on first to the overall structure, it doesn't have a time limit. ZAT doesn't have a time limit. So, you have to choose which sections you want to allot more time to, so you can play more time on your strengths as well and maximize your score. Secondly, there are 5 options in ZAT, right? So it's more difficult to eliminate it gets more and more difficult to eliminate the options and get to the right one. In CAT, it's 4 options, so it's more easier. Third thing is it has a decision-making section, which is very, very tricky. And till date, me and Jeet are also figuring out what actually takes to crack the decision-making section. But I think people at iQuanta have do figure out, how to crack the decision-making section, and they will surely help you up with that. Fourth thing, in the VILR section, there are poems. So, poems are actually more difficult to comprehend because they are not very linearly written. So, if you can get a strategy to solve poems, then you can actually do good in them, right? So, that is something which is different in that. Now, we can actually, yes, open the floor up for questions. There are a few questions that have been asked. So, let's answer them first, and then, we can probably open the floor for more questions. So Ramavat is asking, do we need to focus more on modern math and PNC? So you need to understand that modern math and PNC typically has around a 5-7 question weightage every single year. Around 4 to 6 you can take as a rough estimate. Now, do you need to focus on it? If you're very, very bad at it, if you're struggling at modern math and PNC, I would tell that as we just mentioned, understand the L1 and L2 level questions, how to form arrangements, how to find permutations, how to find combinations, right? And in AP how to find the sum of an infinite GP, stuff like that, right? So try to find questions like these and understand how to solve them. Do not go for the uttermost difficulty in the PNC, because that is very, very difficult to master even for someone who's good at QA, right? So I would still suggest that do not go for very difficult questions, but bring it up to the baseline so that if the level of difficulty for modern math and PNC is not very much, you should be able to tackle those questions because your peers surely will, right? So that is something which I hope answers your questions, Ramavat. Shreya is asking, do we need to spend 3-4 minutes to mark the difficulty level and then attempt it, or just go with the start? As I mentioned, I did not. So I typically did not skim through the entire QA section because it would take a lot of time. As I went with every question, I spent 10 minutes assessing if I'm good at these questions or not, if I would be able to solve this question or not. And if in the 10 seconds I didn't get that thing in my mind that I would be able to do that question, I would either mark for review or next, or I would straight skip it depending on. So I would, what I did was I would mark for review and next for L2 difficulty of questions, and I would skip for L3 difficulty of questions swaps, right? So that I have that proper colored schema of which questions I need to attempt next and which question I do not have to. G, do you have any other answer for this?
No, no, no. The same, like you actually to skim through this whole QA section, it's very difficult. It's very time taking because each question is different and unrelated. So you will have to spend a lot of time on that. Instead, you could just go by question and question and just mark for review the questions you want to come back to it again, and then just go by just start solving each question as you come.
Yes. No problem, Rama. So Harshit is asking, my arithmetic and geometry is decent, but algebra is below par. So what should be my strategy to prepare and improve algebra in the given time? Same strategy. I mean, algebra is actually more vast than modern math and PNC. So for algebra, you have a lot of topics from quadratic to functions to APGP and a lot of things. So, you cannot actually master algebra in 30 days, for that matter, not even in 2-3 months. It actually takes a lot of time to master algebra. But what I can suggest you is go through the PYQs, look at the questions of algebra from PYQs, look at the questions from algebra in ICAT or iQuanta mocks as well, or sectionals. Try solving a lot of sectionals, guys. I mean, if you're actually struggling with a particular section in QA, try solving a lot of sectionals. That will actually help you increase your confidence for that, and it will actually help you improve your scores as well in whichever section you're struggling with. Ramawat is asking, is it wise enough to go for as many marks as we could in these people? No, not at all. I mean, totally not advisable. I mean, in these 30 days, do not solve more than 7 mocks, let's say twice a week. Do not solve more than, or if you're very, very comfortable, thrice a week at max. Right? What people do is they attempt mock every single day. So they attempt 20 mocks in the last month itself. No, that is totally not advisable, because what can happen is there are two things that can happen. First of all, you can get overburdened and you can get fatigued, right? Now, if you're fatigued, you might not want to solve more questions at all. And, when the date is actually near to the actual exam, you do not want to get fatigued, right? Right? You want to stay fresh. So do not solve as many mocks as you can. Solve like 2 to 3 mocks every single week, but properly analyze them, right? Properly analyze them, note them down in your notebook, the questions which you're able to do, the question which you're not able to do. So analyzing is more important than giving the mock. No one is going to ask you, let's say, did you solve 40 mocks, right? If you can do it in 4 mocks, that's even better. I think, Jeet, do you have anything else to
Yeah,
answer?
so just one thing, one practice that I also followed during my JE and CAT also is the CAT is on Sunday, right? So on Saturday, do not study anything, do not give any
Yeah.
mock, do not analyze anything. You, whatever you have done till now, you have that, your preparation is intact, it's very good, and it's going to help you, and you are going to get the result you want. So one day is a buffer that you do not study anything new or anything you don't need to revise anything or any section you know your week. So just don't prepare anything on Saturday and Sunday. Sorry, so on Saturday itself and Sunday you have the cat. So this is one practice I've followed and it has helped me a lot. It keeps your mind fresh and you are able to like you are at your peak performance during cat itself.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I don't know what Jeet's plan were before Cat. I personally went for a movie. I personally went to Time Zone to play. I mean, because I was so. What happened for me was if I sat at home looking at that computer, looking at all those notebooks that I had, I used to get very, very stuck in myself that, should I study something? Should I not study something? Should I give a mock today itself? Now, guys, understand this. Do not give mock at least 2, 3 days before Cat because if you score bad 2, 3 days before CAT, your confidence is going to go down the drain. Do not touch any mock, do not touch. So, if you can look at the analysis part of it that you did before CAT and understand to reinforce in yourself that don't have to make these mistakes again, but do not attempt any mock because you do not want your confidence to go down. Yes, of course, if you score good, your confidence will go up, but that's not as bad as what bad scores are going to do to you, right? Shreya and Avneet are asking, giving sectionals every day, would that be a good way to go? Not a lot of them. I mean, not a lot of them. Don't overburden yourself, right? And do not give sectionals for every section. Try giving sectionals for section which you are struggling with, right? Now, if you're actually good at QA, solving a lot of sectionals for QA will not help you, but take a lot of your time and overburden yourself. If you're struggling with, let's say, VARC only, try solving sectionals for VARC. If you're struggling with DILR, try solving sectionals for DILR because you need to improve that aspect of it. And for your strength, if QA is your strength, do not give sectionals. Try giving, normal,
Full marks.
I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, full marks. That's going to make more sense, I feel. And Abhishek is asking how to select easy passages for RC. Now, I don't know if I gave a triple test for this, but why one thing is do not, as Jeet very, very rightly mentioned, do not fall into that trap of comfort zone that I am comfortable in economics. I see economics, I just jump to that RC out there. No, read that RC. That might be very, very tough to read. Read the questions. Those might be very, very tough to answer, right? So do not go forward with that comfort thing, first of all. Secondly, as we rightly mentioned, read like the first 2 lines and the last 2 lines of the passage. That's going to give you the linguistic complexity of the passage, right? Now, not everything is Shashi Tharoor. I think none of us right here are Shashi Tharoors, right? So we need to understand that we need to find that comfortable level of English to be actually able to solve that passages, right? And when we're reading the passages, read those questions as well if you get time. That are those fact-based RCs, right? Fact-based RCs are an absolute sitters, right? You should attempt fact-based RCs, and there's no question about it. No matter the language is difficult, no matter the language is easy. If they're just asking fact, what you need to do is match the following. The question is asking this, the answer is here, you need to match it. So do not never ever skip fact-based RCs, no matter how linguistically complex they are, but you'll only understand that once you read the questions, right, Jeet?
Yeah, I'm totally agree with it because one thing was that I was not very comfortable with mythological or historical RCs, but whenever I used to get some questions, the passage seemed pretty easy. So just reiterating that don't fall into that trap. Make a list of skim through the passages and then start attempting it. Make a prioritized order and then start go through the VRC section. Yeah.
Yes. Shreya's asking, I was scoring decent score in mocks, but since last 2 mocks, my score is going down. In quant, some questions are doable in analysis, but seems tough while attempting it. What to do? Now, if they seem tough to you, and if you found them easy while analyzing them, there might be 2 things. First of all, your analysis might be wrong. That you thought it's easy in the start, but then when you started solving and then you saw the data and you couldn't plug it up. So what you should do it, you should leave that question. if you felt it's doable in analysis, doesn't mean you have to stick to that question and do it till the end, right? If you feel it's tough while doing it, leave that question, right? Secondly, what happens is the question is so doable that you make silly mistakes, right? Now it is so easy that, the race is so easy. The rabbit ran so fast, but then he slept and then he lost the race. We run the race so fast that we fall down. If the question is so doable, still do a triple check. Still do if you went wrong somewhere, right? And understand you should not make silly mistakes in questions which are very, very doable and easy, right? And if they're actually tough, one thing also can be there is the time pressure aspect of it, right? Now that's gonna come up as you do more questions, as you give more mocks, the time pressure, you have to mentally succumb yourself to that particular thing and understand that the more you do with them, the better it is. Don't worry, even if it's the time pressure, understand you don't have to solve all 22 questions. Just solve good 14, 15, 13 questions and you're good to go. I think for an average student doing QA. Right, Jeet?
Yeah, yeah. So I think Apeksha has a question about that she's giving sectionals and full marks every day, but she's not making an improvement in quant. So I think there are two ways like you could analyze the paper. One is the way we have talked right now that about the sections, the topics which are comfortable with, and make a list of them and see if the mistakes that you're making or the questions you're not able to attend are of the same sections or the same topics. And the second thing is you could do is like the time factor. Like say the first about 12 or 8 or 10 questions that you're attempting, you are able to get them correct, but the second part of the sections that the questions that you're attempting, you're not able to convert them. So one thing you could also, this is what you have to analyze at where the section is going wrong. Is it because of the time pressure or the stress, or is it because of some topics that you're not comfortable with? So I think you need
Also,
to give some time. Yeah. Yeah.
one thing you're going very, very wrong, Apeksha. I'm sorry to point that out is do not give full marks every day. So if you're giving full marks on sectionals every single day, you're essentially putting up 4 marks, 4 hours just giving marks every single day, right? Let's say if you give two sectionals or three sectionals, you're essentially putting a lot of time solving just mocks, right? So do not do that. Essentially, if you want to solve mocks, solve one in 2 to 3 days, because that's essentially going to give you that time space to be improving in that next mock, right? If you're giving mocks every single day, you would not see any improvement because you are not giving yourself time to improve, right? You're not solving questions between mocks to improve that weakness or improve the fault that you find in the previous mock, right? So give yourself that time before the last mock so that you can improve and see that improvement, right? And for QA, I think Jeet did answer it. Palak Thakur is asking, I've been doing, and there are a lot of plus ones for that. I've been doing quite decent in RC, but in recent days, I'm lacking in accuracy. How to cope that up? Now, there's just one answer to that. First of all, I'll tell you why that happens. The more we move on to the CAT exams, we feel that we should get better and better and better than actually getting better and better and better. We feel that, as time progresses, our growth should be linear or exponential. Even if it's not happening, we want to push that up to the mock, right? Now we're giving mocks, we feel that we should be doing good, and then we solve a lot of questions. For that we thought that we were solving 15 questions in June, 17 in September, so we should be solving 20 by now, right? Now that doesn't work that way. If you're solving more, if you the day you're getting closer to the exam doesn't mean you have to solve more and more questions. Understand that more than attempts, accuracy is a very, very important thing. So as we did mention, the mistake number one in RC, if you're struggling with accuracy, try toning down your attempts. The mistake number two, the two options part of thing, do the triple test. If find out which option is the best, and then choose that option, right? And mistake number three, do not attach ego to the RC question. If you have read just because you've read the RC, doesn't mean you have to solve those 5 questions. Four are also good enough if solved correctly, right? I think I did answer a question. If you have anything else to say apart from that, you can just tell.
I think we must one question that while solving questions in QA, you forget the time and spend 5 to 7 minutes on a single question. So I think one thing you could do is you could keep a track of the time by writing down the time on your rough sheets itself. So as and when you start solving the question, you could write the timestamp at which time you started the question. And then whenever you're solving the question, you can just have a look at the time that's remaining on the screen itself. So this is like you can keep a cap of 2 minutes or 2.5 minutes for each question, and then you can keep a track by writing down the timestamp because whenever you start, you know how much time has passed and you need to move on to the next question. So don't spend too much time on one question, and because it's going to affect your performance for the whole section. So this is one thing I could that could solve your issue. I think if Aman has anything to add.
Right. So we'll take like a couple of two, three more questions, then let's end it, right? First of all, hi, Saurabh. I mean, I felt you had a good urge to say hi to us. So hi from me and Jeets to you. Second is Akansha, I'll quickly brief you up to any suggestions to improve VA. So for improving VA, coming up to para summary, you do elimination. Elimination is the best way to do para summary. Find out which options are the worst ones, which options do not resonate with the passage. That is one. For para jumbles, again, what you do is you try to find the starting sentence once, and then you find the conjunction from the starting sentence. And if you can find the ending sentence, the question is essentially solved for you. But if you can find the starting sentence and have that conjunction, then let's say you find out fourth is a starting sentence, and 4-2 are actually matching up. So you're essentially like 4-2, and then you just have two combinations. It's either 4-2-1-3 or 4-2-3-1, right? So you then work with those two permutations, and whichever works the best for you, whichever sounds the best to you, is the final answer. And for odd one out, it's just your comprehension and you aligning with. So all those out of those five, four will have a proper storyline. Understand which is not following the fundamental storyline. So for that, you need to practice a lot. If you're struggling with odd one out, practice a lot of them. Find out what's the fundamental storyline. Try solving more questions, and that's going to improve it for you. And while solving questions, I forget the time and spend 5-7 minutes on a single question, especially when I think it's an easy question. Now, see, that's what we talked about, right? If it takes 5-7 minutes to solve an easy question, doesn't mean it's an easy question then. It's not an easy question. It is a difficult question for you because then you spend the time, 5-7 minutes is a lot of time, right? You will struggle with managing time if you do like this. So if a question is taking more than 2-3 minutes and if it's an easy one, skip it, skip it. Mark for review on next. You have the documentation, you've written the solution. Come back to it later, right? Write down properly that it's the answer of sixth question. Come back to it later and then solve it if you have time. But do not spend time in an instant because then you have a lot of questions to solve. And sometimes what they do is they put up the most easy questions in the end. So if you fall in this trap, you'll actually miss on those very, very easy questions, right? That is one thing.
Yeah, I think one question is from Bhavya. It's like he's facing an issue in quant where he's really nervous watching the time because in the last 15-20 minutes he's not able to solve the questions. So I think one thing you could do is you could divide the quant section into two parts itself, like two 20-minute quant sections. So as and when you move on to the section, first 20 minutes you have about a fixed number of questions you have to attempt and you have a next 20 minutes. So you could take about a 1 minute break, a 30-second break between the sections, and you could calm your mind. And after that, start attempting the questions because once you start panicking, your accuracy is going down the drain because you have to focus on not attempting the maximum number of questions, but you have to attempt the right number of questions. So one thing you could do is you could divide the time and then focus on the time that you have because you now only have 20 minutes to play and you have a much less number of questions that you have to attempt.
All right. Two, three more questions. We'll quickly answer that in a rapid fire fashion because that's ended by 1:10. We've taken a lot of time of you guys. So Abhishek Jat, lot of time I read in RC but समझ नहीं आया how to cope up with the situation, moving to another one. नहीं समझ आया तो छोड़ दो, for that matter उस time पे छोड़ दो, बाद में आ जाना if you feel you're comfortable and you have time, बाद में आ जाना, ठीक है? Rachna, what is good number of mocks to have given before CAT? No particular number. Whichever number gives you that comfort, whichever number gives you that confidence is the best number. If 15 mocks deke you get that confidence is the best. If 35 mocks dene pade, that is something which, so essentially that will come from inside. Not solving a lot of mocks is going to help you, but whatever mock you solve, properly analyze that. How to revise font. If you have made notes, try to make short notes, try to revise formulas, try to revise methods, and do manage a notebook for that, right? And I think we are pretty much done. Nikhil, some
Yeah.
LRDA questions are unnecessarily hard. Leave them. Leave them. Essentially, if they're unnecessarily hard without the paper, in the paper for sure, put
You're
my
not going
words,
to
you'll
able
not
to
be able
attempt
to
them.
solve them. You will not be able to attempt them, right? So leave them right there, and do not panic कि नहीं हो रहा है मुझसे. It's okay. हमसे भी नहीं हो रहा था, ठीक है? So it's totally fine. You can like relax. And final question is from Saurabh. How to analyze VRC section? I think we did mention it, Saurabh. So once the video is uploaded, you can go back in the video and then in the comment section if you guys have any doubts. I know it's not a lot of time for you guys to ask doubts, but in the comment section, if you have any doubts of the video, you can surely ask them, and then me and Jeet will help you to the best of our capacity and capability. Yes, thank you so much, iQuanta, for giving us this absolutely nice opportunity as well. And we hope we did contribute something back to the culture. Yeah.